No man in the crowded frontier hall dared lift his hand when she was brought forward, not because she lacked strength or beauty, but because her eyes carried something far more dangerous than either: defiance. Hardened by suffering, the wooden auction platform creaked beneath her bare feet as lantern light revealed the bruises on her arms and the dust in her hair, yet her back remained straight, her chin unbowed. She had been captured weeks earlier after her homestead burned to ash, dragged across desert, miles by men who thought a woman alone was property waiting to be claimed, and now she stood before a room full of cowboys, traders, gamblers, and bounty hunters who suddenly found their courage failing them. Whispers rolled through the crowd like uneasy wind. She was trouble. They said wild, unbreakable, cursed. The auctioneer tried to sell her with loud bravado, calling her useful and obedient, but every word rang hollow against her silence. One by one, men looked away. Some feared her strength, others her spirit, and some perhaps saw too much of their own shame reflected back at them. The price dropped. Still no bids. The hall grew tense, embarrassment mixing with fear, until even the auctioneer's voice began to crack. That was when the saloon doors opened with a slow, deliberate creak, and a lone cowboy stepped inside. He was not loud, not young, and not flashy. Dust clung to his coat, and the lines on his face spoke of long trails and longer regrets. He took in the scene with quiet eyes, noticed how the men holding her arms tightened their grip when she met his gaze, and how she did not look away. Something passed between them, recognition maybe, or the shared understanding of people who had lost everything and kept walking anyway. The room watched as he removed his hat, not in respect for the auction, but for her. When he spoke, his voice was steady, cutting through the tension like a blade through rope. He didn't ask her price. He asked the auctioneer one simple question: is she being sold, or is she being stolen? Laughter tried to rise, but it died quickly. The cowboy stepped forward, each boot step echoing, and placed his money on the table, not as a bid, but as a challenge. He said he would pay, not to own her, but to end the farce, to claim her freedom then and there. The room erupted. Some shouted, others protested, but none moved fast enough when he turned to her and said quietly, "If you want to walk out of here, I'll stand with you." For the first time, her expression changed, not to hope but to choice. She nodded once. That single motion shattered the control the hall thought it held. As the men restraining her hesitated, unsure, the cowboy stepped between them and her, his hand resting near his holster, not eager for violence but fully prepared for it. No shots were fired, no fists thrown. Fear did what force could not. She walked off the platform on her own feet, past men who suddenly found the floor more interesting than her eyes, and as the saloon doors closed behind them, the crowd was left with a silence heavier than any gunfire, realizing they had just witnessed something rarer than gold on the frontier, a man who refused to profit from another person's chains. If this moment gripped you, if stories of courage and freedom mattered to you, subscribe now, because the journey is only beginning. Outside, the desert air felt sharper, colder and more honest, and for a long moment neither of them spoke as the noise of the saloon faded behind them, like a bad dream losing its power. The cowboy offered her water first. Not questions, not instructions, and that alone told her more about him than words could. She drank, then told him her name, not because he asked, but because she chose to, and with it came the weight of everything she had lost: her land, her family, her belief that the world would ever let her stand unafraid again. He listened without interrupting, without pity, only with the quiet respect of someone who understood that survival often leaves scars no one else can see. He told her he had once walked away while injustice happened in front of him, and that the sound of that failure had followed him across every mile since. This time, he said, he stayed. Trouble came quickly, as it always does when freedom is claimed instead of granted. Men from the hall followed them into the night, angry that a woman they thought powerless had slipped through their fingers, angrier still that a single cowboy had exposed their cowardice. What followed was not a heroic massacre or a clean victory, but something far more real, a tense standoff under the open sky, where the cowboy stood shoulder to shoulder with her, not in front of her, making it clear that whatever came next would come for them both. She refused to hide. She refused to kneel. When words failed and weapons were drawn, it was her voice that rang out, reminding those men that they had already lost the moment they tried to own another human being. Shots cracked the night, but the desert swallowed the sound. And when dawn came, it revealed something unexpected. Not bodies, not victory banners, but retreat. The men left carrying fear instead of profit. As the sun rose, she realized freedom was not a thing handed over with money. It was something defended again and again, with choice and courage. She chose not to follow the cowboy as property or passenger, but as an equal. Together, they rode toward uncertain land, not as savior and victim, but as two people who had decided that silence was no longer an option. The frontier would remember that night, not because of bloodshed, but because a woman was not bought, and a man refused to look away. And somewhere down that long road, as dust rose behind their horses and the past loosened its grip, the story turned from survival into something stronger: purpose. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, if you believe courage should always be louder than cruelty, then subscribe to the channel now and walk these untold roads with us, because the next story may change how you see the world.